with me.
Could you explain us how did you learn the Feng Shui technique? Since at that time there wasn't internet, so if you had any teacher or master, or you were reading books or attending some courses?
So it actually started for me when I was 15, and I actually went through a very difficult time. I had a very major accident. I was run over by a truck, and I also had a near-death experience. I came back from being on the other side, and I actually asked my spiritual teacher that I already had since I was 7. I asked him, why did this happen to me, right? And he said, well, Marie, you have bad Feng Shui. That's the first time I heard about the word Feng Shui. And he explained to me that my environment was really influencing me, and that my bedroom had bad Feng Shui. And now I did not like my bedroom at all. It's like one of these things, you know, when you grow up, you get the clothes of your sister. Well, I got the room of my sister, right? So she went out of the house and I got her room, and there was still the same images hanging there, the same wallpaper. But it probably worked for her, but it did not work for me. I hated that room. And you know, my life was not going so well. I mean, I was very successful at school, but I had no friends, and I was bullied at school, and so I knew something was off. I was already doing a lot of work on the law of attraction. I was having the right mindset, but still, you know, I had like many accidents happening there. Yeah, it was a lot of sick in that room. And so then I asked my teacher, what do I do? And he said, you have to be in a room where there's more sunlight, where you can paint it. And he suggested to me some colors that would work for me. And he said, create your own images, right? Because I was a good painter. So create your own images. And so he gave me some first instructions. And that's what I started working with when I was 15. And I kept using these basic principles. And you know, things shifted. So I started having a lot of friends. I had my first boyfriend. It was like my health improved. So a lot of positive things came out within a few weeks after moving into that other bedroom. And you know, I became very successful in my career. So I used some basic principles. And then when I was 31, my teacher actually shared that it was the first book in Dutch, because I come from Belgium, from this Dutch-speaking level, Dutch-speaking area, that you know, he said there was a book out in my language on Feng Shui. So I got that first book, and then within a month, I heard about this conference. I was in London, where all the great masters of Feng Shui were coming together. So I just booked my ticket, and that's when I really started focusing on the information of Feng Shui. And there are 7 grandmasters, as they call them. And one of these grandmasters was Grandmaster Yap Shanghai. And he took me under his wings, and I started studying with him in London and Malaysia, in LA, and to really become a master practitioner and a master later on. So it was really interesting. I believe it's part of my destiny to learn this, right? But I also was really guided to find a true master.
Can you see any changes in your progress, for example, in applying Feng Shui technique on your early, when you started to apply this technique, and now? Do you have a progress? Do you applying more technique, or have any new technique now in comparison to that time when you started?
Well, you know, when you start, you're bringing Feng Shui to the world. you're already more advanced, because you cannot start bringing something when you're on a basic level. You have to have done it already a few years before you consult people. But I would say now I'm considered a Feng Shui Master worldwide. So the influence I have, and of course the students I have worldwide, I'm really considered the #1 Feng Shui Master in the Western world. I'm not talking about Asia, but in the Western world. I'm the most viewed Feng Shui Master on YouTube. I would say that the possibilities now that we have on social media, online programs. I have, so many students worldwide, hundreds of thousands of students worldwide online. That was not available at that moment, right? So we had to start with teaching people in person. So of course, I have 25 years of experience now as a Feng Shui Master. So of course, I would say you practice over and over again. You have had hundreds of thousands of hours of practice, right? But I also started understanding that, the typical Feng Shui was really brought forward in China. And as I'm a Western woman, I brought Feng Shui together with the more Western information. So I added and focused much more on colors than on symbols. Like the Chinese Feng Shui Master will use a lot of Chinese symbols. I brought it in such a way that you can use everything that's in your house to manifest this. You don't have to make it a Chinese temple, right? So everything you have can be seen and checked out what you can use for Feng Shui. And that is something that I learned over the years. I really talked much more about the quantum physics of Feng Shui, how it influences your brain waves, how it influences your mindset. And of course then, as I'm one of the teachers in The Secret, I talk about how the environment is influencing your law of attraction. So that is something I didn't talk about in the beginning, because I was really trained in a typical Chinese way. But I brought it completely into a level that's understandable for the Western world.
Yes. So when you help people, are you using only Feng Shui technique, or you have any other methods or technique that can be also applied in the same time with the Feng Shui?
Well, as a Feng Shui Master, in the original way, thousands of years ago, because it's about 4,000 years old, Feng Shui. A Feng Shui Master knew several things. He would look at how the environment is influencing you through, the front door influences you, the way where you sleep, where you're sitting, the colors, the images, everything around you influences you. But Feng Shui Masters always had another aspect, and that was Dowsing. So Dowsing is an energy method, a system really, where you can find out where is underground water, what people do to find wells, for example. But they would always look where are ley lines, and the Chinese would call it dragon lines actually. And so they always would look where the strongest energies are in the room or in a place, so that they would then build that place there. And make sure that people would sleep or sit on strong energy places or even energy vortexes. And so from the last, I would say, 1,000 years, a lot of the Feng Shui Masters forgot about that aspect. And for me, I really felt that was as important. So I teach people Diamond Feng Shui, that's my school, but also Diamond Dowsing. And I teach them, really how to douse a place for finding the negative, I would say the negative spots in the house, from underground water, fault lines, electricity, Wi-Fi, and how to cure that. And this is very easy to learn. So that's the second aspect I also talk about. But I also always talk to people about the inner Feng Shui, I call it the inner diamond system. And I teach people not just to use the chi, the energy of the environment, also how to connect with the inner chi, the chi of the energy of your source, if people would call it your soul or your spirit, your heart, So I always would work and say to people, it's not just working on the outside, it's also working on the inside, and making sure these two aspects align. So these are my three big systems: diamond feng shui, diamond dowsing, and the inner diamond meditation.
Okay. How you can help bigger companies to be more successful, to be better in their business? Since when we are speaking about Feng Shui, is about fixing the flow of the energy in space. So bigger companies have larger offices.
Yes.
And also, if you combine Feng Shui technique with some other technique that you mentioned.
Yeah. So when I work with bigger companies, what we have seen with Feng Shui, what we can help them with is, first of all, the level of concentration. Because, people are sitting, 8 hours, 10 hours, even longer sometimes on their desk. They're not always on the highest level of productivity. So we have seen if people are facing the right direction, if they have the right colors around them, the right messages around them, then their concentration level goes up. The second thing we see when we practice Feng Shui for greater companies is that the level of absenteeism, the level of people taking off because of illness and sickness, will actually go down. So because if you have a company that has greater harmony, then people love to come to work. And they even love more to come to work than being at their home. So they won't find so fast excuses to come to work. So that's one of the things we have seen, a huge difference in that level. We also seen when we work with companies, I focus on making sure their values. So every company has a vision, a mission, and goals and values that they want to manifest through their services and their products in the world. So a lot of times they just use that in their marketing or in their teamwork, but they don't always express it in their environment. So I call that energetic branding. So I always make sure that their vision, mission, goals, and values is expressed through the colors, through the images that are in the space that people work, that people visit, even online. I mean, I do work with a lot of companies to help an energetic branding of their website, to see that these deeper layers of their message is actually represented in everything that they express. And even sometimes they will ask me to make sure I brand that for their products, their programs. Musicians, for example, or publishing houses will make sure then that whatever product, if it's music or books, that it is in the same energy flow, really. So that's what we do with major companies. But I also have a lot of major companies that are looking for the level of safety and well-being in their house or in their company. And so I've worked with a lot of petrochemical companies where they start having a lot of safety issues and accidents. And so as we redesigned and remodeled with the right harmonic colors and vibrations, their offices and the places where people work, their accidents went down, their safety issues went down. So because I believe that people can only concentrate to a certain point, they can only feel well to a certain point with your mindset. You need to really bring in the environment, because the environment influences you non-stop, 24 hours a day, where you sleep, where you work, where you live. It influences you non-stop.
Can, for example, the color of logo of your company or maybe your product, I don't know if you sell China or anything else, that can apply a color, and it can influence on your success of your business?
Yes, definitely. Colors are a major influence. Colors give energy. Right? It's an energy vibration to it. And some people will have a tendency to feel attracted to green, and others to gold, and others to purple, or whatever it is, right? So it's not just a color and a vibration, there's a meaning behind it. So I do work in Diamond Feng Shui with 24 colors that do 6 that really affect success and money, 6 that really affect relationship, 6 that really affect your health, and also 6 that affect your wisdom. We call it quantum colors. And so based on the birthday of a person, based on their the start of a company, there's an energy flow that happens. Like right now, what we're wearing is, you're wearing emerald green, who stands for healing, right? We are sitting in these beautiful chairs that are what I would call a magenta, right? And magenta stands for peace and harmony, right? I wear a lot of gold, that stands for abundance, right? So, you know, logos give an influence to people. People put a connection with a color. So sometimes I have seen that companies start with good colors and then they change it because it's like, you know, different time, and then, you know, people don't feel connected with it anymore. Or people sometimes have bad colors in their logo, and I said, okay, let's change that, and then their business goes up because the colors give a subconscious message to the audience.
Yes, of course. For example, if someone called you from the Croatian government and ask you to be advisor or maybe help the country in progress, what you could advise and what steps you could it's needed to be taken first?
Yeah, well, I did help in the past a few governments. So one of the first thing I was actually I've been a lot in Croatia. So one of the first things I would say to the government is, you know, revitalize the beauty you have, right? You have beautiful buildings, right? So revitalize that. Make sure they are cleaned up. They are beautiful again. Take off the graffiti, right? Especially on governmental buildings, on buildings like theaters, culture centers. Make sure they look beautiful. I think that's the first big step I would do, because if government shows their greatness through their buildings, then if they clean that up, people will clean up also their own homes, and make sure your parks are beautiful. And I know there are beautiful parks, beautiful places in Croatia, but make sure your parks are welcoming. Make sure there's a lot of fountains, because fountains creates flow and creates abundance. And definitely inside for the government, I always make sure every authority is always sitting in the right way. And that's not just for people in the government, for everyone. I always say make sure you see the door when you speak, right, to people. So set your desk in such a way that you see the door. You know, I would say definitely when you have places where you gather for conferences, put the beauty of Croatia in pictures, right? So it could be the flag, it could be beautiful images of different parts of Croatia. Make sure the government is connecting in with everyone and every place and in the country. So remind the people that are in charge who they work for and for what they work for, right? By placing the right images around them. I know sometimes we want to put images up and statues from the past, like the great ones that lived before us, but ultimately the government does not work for the past, they work for the people present now. So make sure you show pictures of that.
Yeah. You mentioned before the date of birth of a person is very important, and there is, you say, 9 energy types. But how to fix the energy flow in a home where live people with different energy numbers?
Yeah. Well, the first step is you need to know your own energy number, right? So people, if they want, you can always go to the website, namaridam.com, where they click in their free energy report and they put in their name and their gender. And then they get a report to understand what is the energy number. And so there are 9 numbers, 1 to 9, and they're connecting with the compass direction. So everybody, when you're born, is connected with the compass direction for success, one for health, one for relationship, and one for your wisdom. And so the first one is success direction is really important. That's why, you will then use a compass, and you will then find out in your living room, your bedroom, and your office what is right now in your success direction. So right now, mine is southwest, right? In this lifetime, it's southwest. So I always make sure that I play something that inspires me in the southwest. Yeah. In my living room, it will be my family, because that's my success there. But in my office, it will be my books. I actually, in my success direction, I have an image of Croatia, literally. All the countries that I have worked with or worked in, I have placed a symbol of that, right? Because I want to be successful in that area. It could be that you place a logo of your company there, or a vision board, or books on success, or a flag of your country, or something that manifests stronger there. When you have different numbers, like it is, there are a few numbers that are very similar, and that's energy number 1, 3, 4, and 9. We call them East people. So they have a combination of north, south, east, and southeast compass directions, right? It's easier for them, to activate their home, right? Energy number 2, 5, 6, 7, and 8 are connected with the west, and they will have southwest, west, northwest, northeast as compass directions. So it's a little bit easier for them to work together. But what you always do is, there are several steps. So the first thing, you always check out your front door. So you stand in your front door of your home and your office, and you face out. And with your compass direction, with your compass, you check is that a good direction for you, right? Is it one of your 4 good directions? Now, if you have people that are, one is an east person, one is a west person, then if the front door is good for one person, then you make sure the bed is good for the other person. So how do you measure the bed? You stand at the foot end, you look at the headboard, you measure the compass where the head is pointed towards, and then you try to give that direction to the other person. Sometimes that's not even possible, because, right, you cannot always change your home around. But then you can look for, like, your office. So then you can sit behind your desk, hold your compass, and make sure your desk is facing, you're looking at a good direction. And you can then switch your desk in such a way, or your computer screen, so everybody can then work in their own area. If you don't have an office, you can do it in the dining room. You can sit in the sofa facing a good direction. So you always try to face as much as possible a good direction, because then your brainwave will go from what we call beta into alpha. Beta brainwave is when we are not concentrated. We're kind of in, our 9 to 5 mode, like we're not very awakened. We're just, the people that live from 9 to 5 don't ask a lot of questions. They are like in automatic pilot. That's beta brainwaves. When you are facing the right direction, what happens, your brainwave will go into alpha brainwave. When you go into alpha, your brain will actually open up more, and you start seeing the beauty, you will start being enthusiastic, you'll be more like, oh, look at this, it's possible, you see the opportunities more. You also feel more happy and more inspired, and you start asking more questions about what you can do for your world, for your life, and for your community. So you open up your life. So you stop living on automatic pilot and you start directing your own airplane, right? So you're going in your own direction. And so that is, by changing your position, that is always an important piece. And then you also activate the area. So once you know your success direction, you'll place something in your success direction that inspires you. You also have a relationship direction. In your relationship direction, you'll put something connected with your in the living room for your family, in your bedroom for your romance, in your office for with your colleagues, your team. So you put images that are connected with it. So I just want to mention we have a book in creation version called the Energy Number Book, right? Where people can actually, even if you don't speak English, you can actually go and get that book, and you will then see what is your birthday, and then you follow exactly the steps that are in the book.
While we were preparing for this interview, we tried this. You have the energy number to come out to see what they are saying there, and there was something that was a bit confusing. There are steps what you need to take to make better success, or if you want better health, and there are things like if you want success, you need to sleep in some direction,
yes,
no matter what. And also, if you want to sleep to have better health, is another direction for the same number.
It's depending
what the priority.
Well, it depends what you choose, right? So if you really want to focus more on success, right, you want to face your success, right? If you want to focus more on health, you can sleep a certain direction. So it's not that you have to do everything, you have to make a choice, right? What do you want? Like if somebody's single, right, she doesn't want to focus on success perhaps, she wants to focus on finding a true love. So then I will suggest, well, then do this steps, make sure you sleep the right direction, activate your romantic direction. When you go and meet somebody, make sure you face that direction as much as possible. So these are choices, right? It's not you cannot do all at once. It's impossible, right?
Impossible, yes. That's why I'm asking what if we need to make a priority.
Well, if it's a priority,
one by one.
Yeah. If it's a priority, I would suggest to go for the success direction. Yeah. But there's always one rule that you cannot forget, and that is you always try to see the door. Yeah. Right now we're not set up in such a way, right? But that's because of the light, right? But so if we would be here and do the Feng Shui, we would actually sit on the other side, right? So that we could see the door. But now we could just imagine the door is where the camera is, right? So so always try to see the door. Yeah. Whenever you're sitting, whenever you're waking up, and you stand up, see the door, and then. If you see the door, you try to face a good direction. And sometimes you cannot face the success direction because it's just not possible. But then try to face your health direction or your relationship or your wisdom direction. So you have 4 to choose out of, and most of the time you can really accommodate your position to face one of these directions.
I have one question that is also that need an explanation. Is it more important to follow general rules or rules that you have by your energy number? For example, if for business success is in general rules to face the doorway while you're sitting, or if according to your number is maybe you need to sit in and you're facing east or west, or what is more important, to follow this rule, the side of
the first rule is always a power position. You need to see the door. That is always the first rule. Yeah. And then from there you try to see if your personal rules apply too, right? And even if you cannot face the right direction, you can still activate the different areas in the room, right? Perfect Feng Shui does not exist, right? I always tell people, look, even in my space, I see the door, but I cannot face my success direction, because in my office, then I would be with my back to the door. And sitting with your back to the door always brings your business down. Yeah. So you don't want to. You always want to see the client coming in. Even if you're online, working in your office, the door is always where people come in. So you perhaps want to see the window and say, there's a beautiful view, right? But if you don't see the door, I would say people don't come through the window, right? And the people that come through the window, they mostly have not always good ideas, or they have not a good purpose to come into your house. So, you know, if you want, you can see the door and see the window, right? But always the major rule is seeing the door. Second one is try to adapt it to your personal experience. Yes.
We know that meditation is really important for every person. Is any, let's say, better space or better Feng Shui to meditate better, to have a deeper experience, or to connect more?
Yeah.
What you can do?
I do feel that most people intuitively, if they want to meditate or take some time for themselves, it's like our body is a compass in its own, right? So we mostly feel kind of where we're sitting if we can go in a silent space, right? So always make sure there's not too much noise around you, of course, right? And if there's a lot of noise, make sure there's some background music or silent noise or some fountain to have like a different experience. Always make sure you sit in a place where the colors are calm, right? So for example, the colors we are sitting in right now, this is really good for having an active conversation. It's quite a fiery color, but I would not meditate in a place like this. I would first focus on a place that is like more white or beige or earth tones. Like I would not go to places that have too much reds and fire colors, because the mind cannot calm down there so much. But definitely also water colors or near the water always calms down the vibration. And also the images that are around you. If you have images around you that are, I would say, too hectic, too chaotic, right? You can say, well, my eyes are closed, yeah, but the last thing you see before you close your eyes, if that's too hectic, that's not a great place. And also, don't meditate in your office, because meditation is something inner, an inner work you do, and it's like the last thing you see is all your papers and your computer and the phone, and make sure there's no electricity around you. So take your phone away so you don't like each time react to every beep and a sound that comes in. To your computer away. So make sure there's really an electromagnetic free zone where you meditate. Yeah, I would definitely suggest that.
When we speak about Feng Shui, we are mostly speaking about indoor spaces.
Yeah.
But how is important the flow of energy around the house? Does this energy affect the energy in the house?
Yes.
Because we have some also clutter around the house,
yes,
and garbage bins and things like that.
Well, it's like if we look at our own body, right? And we are in a physical body, and if we would be in a space that has a lot of clutter, we won't feel so happy there, because we feel distorted and distracted with it. Well, think about your home as also a physical body, right? And if that physical body is surrounded by clutter, right? Garbage bins, you know, boxes outside, whatever is there, you know, dead flowers and plants, chaos, then, you know, you would not feel good about that, even if you're inside the house, yeah? Because we are not just three-dimensional physical beings, we are energetic beings, right? So you sometimes are with somebody and you don't even touch that person, but you feel like this.
The energy.
You feel the energy. I'm like, oh, I don't feel so good with that person, right? Literally, you're not in that connect with that physical body, but there's an aura field. So also around the house, there's an aura field, an energy field, and it does affect you. So especially when you're, for example, at the entrance, yeah? So as you're walking from the street to your entrance, make sure you have a fresh carpet, you have fresh flowers there, you don't see the garbage bin each time you want to walk into your house, right? So make sure your door is without spider webs. So make sure it's fresh and clean outside and inside, right? But also where your bedroom is, especially where people sleep. I always suggest that just the outside area where they sleep, that like if possible 1 to 2 meters in the garden is for sure free. Now, of course, that's not so easy with people that are in apartments, right? Because their neighbors are actually in their aura field, so you don't know, you have no control over that. So that is something, you know, we cannot change, but I would suggest something, a very simple technique that really works. Get some white quartz crystals, like they don't have to be big, like that big. Wash them with like lavender soap, charge them in the sun for a few hours, and then put them in the 4 corners of your house, of your apartment, like the outside corners, on the floor and on the ceiling. And you're actually, as you're putting there, you're telling and protecting my apartment from any influence of the outside. And then take these crystals every few months, like every 6 months, wash them, clean them, charge them, and place them back. Just tape them there. And it just creates I call it a crystalline support and protection.
Like a bubble.
You'd actually create a crystalline bubble. That's a very good word, yeah.
Can we apply Feng Shui or some other method to spaces like a personal car? Because we spend many time in the car, especially if you use it for your job, like truck drivers or taxi drivers and things like that. Is it possible maybe to also work with Feng Shui there?
Yes, definitely. So one of the things, when people know their energy number, they will also know their good colors, right? So I always suggest people to get a color of car that connects in with their personal success direction, yeah? That will definitely help them, right, to be more successful. One of the things I definitely say to people, don't have too much clutter in your, because clutter is chaos and it always brings your energy down. So I have seen sometimes, people throw everything to the back or to the side, or
they smoke inside the
car, or onto the side, right? So keep your, always hang something that gives your a freshened energy, like a beautiful smell, something that you like, right? Because it's your car. Especially if you smoke, that's definitely a good thing to do. And also, I really like people to have a little image of their family. If they're, for example, truck drivers or taxi drivers, they're like really in the car so long, right? So that they are, even if, especially for truck drivers, I always suggest that hang some pictures out, because then you are still connected with your family, even if you're on the road. So, and then I will take care of, myself more because I have a duty towards my family. So I do love that. And some people hang some protection symbols like around the mirror. I'm really in favor of that.
Can this also protect us? For example, in traffic, where is a lot of this energy flowing that is coming to us.
Yeah.
Is it possible to protect us from this energy?
Yes, and one of the things I always suggest to people is before you go into traffic, right? And you're going to be in traffic, take some time to breathe deeply in and out, really. And just imagine even your whole car to be filled with like sunlight, and even to have sunlight around you. And imagine even that there's like lights between you and on your journey to the place where you go, and ask, literally, I really believe in that because I've seen this happening over and over again. Like, ask for an open space, ask for open energy, and even for when you need parking space, like visualize, I will have parking space. We call it parking angels, right? Or whatever you call it. I always program. And I said to the universe, like, in a half hour, I will be there. Make sure there's a space for me. It always works, right? And sometimes you have to drive around one time, and
it's there. In a minute, it's there.
It's there, right? So, and definitely when you're in traffic, instead of being upset, right? I think good feng shui is then to put some, don't listen too much to conversations, but put some nice music on, right? And start thinking in gratitude about your life. You know, like, oh, I had such a wonderful day, or I'm going to that next meeting, that will be so amazing. Instead of being upset about everybody around you, send some light out. Everybody is frustrated, everybody is upset. So be the factor of goodness and light instead of a factor of anger.
Yes. Our magazine is called Pleasure. It's about the beauty of life, and our slogan is seriously fun. So we always ask the same question to all people which we make the interview with.
Yeah.
And the question is, what do you mean pleasure?
For me, pleasure is, first of all, being with my family, being with my children. That's the greatest pleasure for me. I would say the second pleasure for me is to inspire people, to empower people. In seeing people, I hope also with this interview, having aha moments. Like, that gives me such a joy in my heart. And I'm like, oh, this is what I could do. This is why things are not going well for me. If I change this, I can do, you know, some changes in my life. Giving people back hope in their life, that is definitely the greatest pleasure for me.
Do you have maybe any message for our readers, or you have some word of wisdom that you would like to share?
Well, definitely what I would like to share to them is, first of all, you are the director of your life. You can really change your life. But you need to start with making goals, making plans, following through with them, but also being in gratitude for the life you already have, for the life that you're going to live. And don't forget to love yourself and to love the people around you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.